Hello, hello. Okay, so this is your last day of disorders. This is kind of a catch-all day of everything else. Well, everything that they want to talk about. There's still others. There's plenty others out there that we don't talk about. But, okay, so you got your worksheet. We'll talk about these last ones. And then if there's time left, you can work on your brochure at the end, okay? Okay, so somatic symptom disorder, and a lot of times the AP test will say somatoform. Okay, and what this is basically when there are some kind of bodily symptoms, and that's where somatic comes from. It means bodily. So bodily symptoms that occur without any apparent cause, any physical cause. And that could be like vomiting, dizzy, having blurred vision, swallowing, pain. And they can't really figure out a reason for it. And so, assuming what is causing it then would either be something they can't find or that it's psychological. There's some kind of psychological aspect of it. And culture can have a big effect on this. Some cultures are a little bit more tough than others and won't complain as much. Where would you put the United States there? Probably, I'd say we're an individualist culture. We care a lot about me. So I would say that we tend to be a little less tough. You know, some Asian countries, and obviously places that don't have good health care kind of tough out stuff too. Okay? Alright, the next one's similar but different. Okay, this is basically more extreme. Conversion disorder, where a person experiences very specific genuine physical symptoms with no physiological or physical basis. And that could be things like paralysis or blindness, like really extreme stuff, and they can't find a cause. Again, this is a psychological disorder because they're wondering if there is some kind of psychological reason here for it. So that is conversion disorder. Okay? Now, this is funny that we go over this one. Illness anxiety disorder. We laugh because we all have a little bit of this, right? So when a person interprets their normal physical bodily symptoms as disease. I mean, something could be wrong. You could have a cold, but it's kind of that, oh my gosh, this is blank, right? This is worse. And we used to, or more commonly, this is known as being a hypochondriac. Have you heard of that? Being a hypochondriac? And I think we all have a little bit of this in us, right? Oh my gosh, is this cancer? But some people, this is an anxiety issue, and it's a lot more common than just our couple times a year where we get worried. They're making doctor's appointments, and they're constantly visiting, that kind of thing. Okay? Alright, dissociative disorder. So this is a different category. So if you remember back in chapter 5, I think, unit 5, do you remember what it means to dissociate? We talked about it with hypnosis. To dissociate with hypnosis, remember? That was to kind of being able to split your awareness. Remember that? And that, I think that guy who got some cavities done, that he was able to kind of separate his awareness to a different place. So, remember, dissociate means to disconnect, to separate, right? Well, here, when it comes to disorders, a lot of these, they share that idea of disconnecting, but in kind of some different ways. Okay? So let me talk about 2. Dissociative fugue. Alright, this is kind of an interesting one here. But it's basically when somebody travels away from their home or their work, and they end up somewhere else, and they lose kind of temporarily who they are. And they kind of forget who they are, and it's not like amnesia or somebody who's struggling with Alzheimer's like that. This is more of a psychological issue. They confuse, sometimes they create new identities because they just don't know who they are. And if you're the therapist with this, and somebody comes in, what are you probably thinking? probably that there's something psychologically going on to make them want to create something new. It's almost like a motivated sense of losing yourself. Okay, but just so here's a tip how to remember this. Fugue. Think of like fugitive. Fugitive. Like they're kind of running away. Okay? You're welcome for that. Alright. Now, I'm going to pull something up real quick. I'm going to pause this. Okay, so kind of going back to this idea of dissociative disorders. I had a student a couple years ago. She was very smart. Got a 5 on the AP exam. And she told me kind of towards the end of the year, actually during this unit, that she struggles with a dissociative disorder. And I'd never met anybody before who did. And so they had to do a project at the end of the year. And so she did one on her disorder and to kind of teach people about it. So she basically thought or felt that let's see, this is her project right here, that she felt she was an outside observer of her own thoughts. She was watching herself, almost like watching herself in a movie every day of her life. Feeling like a robot, feeling like you're living in a dream or in a movie. Detachment is let's see. Yeah, it's a feeling you're observing yourself from above as if you're floating in the air. And it's fascinating to just hear her kind of talk about it. She even talked about kind of what causes these disorders. And she talked about abuse, significant trauma, drug use. She talked about how she really struggled with drug use a couple years ago, but then had kind of gotten out of that. Anyway, very interesting. And she also wrote like a essay. I don't know what you call this. Let's just read the 2 kind of first sentences here, or whatever, paragraphs. Awake, arms crossed across my chest, like a dead woman. My world creates a casket. Glance at my arms and sigh. Slowly they raise, but robotically. Is there blood in my veins? Can I escape these chains? They told me I have a problem. I don't believe them. I'm not alive. I'm an alien, a beam of light, an empty stream of consciousness. The world warps and contorts, spins, stutters, stops. I hear voices, but they're distant, and I'm sure the fear is splashed across my face like sweat on the brow of a beast. My so-called soul is now deceased. Okay, so a little bit weird, right? Abnormal for sure. Now what in class? She appeared to be like a little bit withdrawn mentally, but still like nice and normal, and she obviously wasn't too withdrawn in order to get a 5 on the AP test and to take all the information in. But anyway, just wanted to share that with you. Okay, let's keep going. So the other dissociative disorder, dissociative identity disorder. Alright, this in the past was called multiple personalities. Right? You've heard that before? Multiple personality disorder. 2 or more distinct identities. And so now the official name is dissociative identity disorder. However, it's important, is that it's not recognized by the APA or the psychological board. It's recognized as a psychological problem, right? And that it's manifesting itself in their belief, but not the actual existence of more than one identity. So this came about, there was a movie, so one of the videos that you'll watch here is called, well, it's, what year is it? I don't remember, early, like 50s maybe. And this lady named Eve had 3 different personalities or identities, and you'll see it, it's an old video because it was one of the first times it had actually been documented. And she has 3 personalities, and she you'll see her act differently and talk differently. And I think later on that she even picks out a different dress for each personality and walks around, and even the body language is different. But one thing I would kind of ask you is, as you're watching it, is why do you think they stopped recognizing this? I think it'll be kind of obvious there. But, okay, so watch that. Then you'll watch another one, a more modern one of a lady who has like 8 different personalities. And she's gone through therapy and basically been able to manage and deal with it. But watch that. Both of them, though, I want you to think, okay, why do you think they discredited this? All right? Okay. So pause me. Go watch those. Okay. So with Eve, the one that you watched, and then they made a movie out of it later. Why are they discrediting this disorder? Because it appears, at least to me, that there is intention in her switching, right? Now, are there reasons, maybe, if even the other lady, of why she's switching? Right? Yeah. And it could be a lot of, like, I think the other lady had sexual abuse growing up, and there's reasons that they don't want to think about these things. But so they see it more as, like, repression and it's just the defense mechanisms of dealing with anxiety, not the existence of different personalities. Okay? Okay. All right. Also in this chapter, eating disorders, because these are definitely related, obviously, to your psychology. Okay, so anorexia. I know you guys know about all these. 0.6% of people struggle with this, and they come from competitive, high-achieving families. So I knew about eating disorders, and then in college I was in a Bible study with like 7 girls, and all of a sudden it slowly came up. Not till our senior year. We started sophomore year. Our senior year, we realized that they struggled. There were 3 different girls out of these 7 girls that had eating disorders. 2 had anorexia and 1 had bulimia. And 3 out of 7, that's huge, right? Especially, I mean, in my head, I was like, man, these people are supposed to be kind of, I don't know, the backbone of the church and blah, blah, blah. Maybe that's why they like seek out the church, because of these disorders. But it basically made me realize about how common it is, even amongst my best friends, who I was with all the time, and I didn't realize it till maybe a year in. So one of them, they all have different stories. One of them really was the worst and had to go to an inpatient facility over the summer, and she let me go with her to her psychologist or psychiatrist. I don't remember which one. And we didn't have to, but we chose to help her and like sit with her. So one of us had a meal with her every day to make sure she was eating, and it is intense. I remember calling her mom at one point, and in college you don't really know people's moms super well. You know them a little bit. And I called her mom to tell her, and all my other friends agreed, that she was slipping and getting worse. This was before the summer she went to treatment. And the mom was like, oh, is she exercising too much again? Like, kind of blowing it off. And after I got off that phone conversation, I was so saddened that the mom, I mean, don't get me wrong, the mom had seen it all through high school and blah, blah, blah. But I was just saddened that the mom didn't have that deep sadness in there. And so I think right here where it says competitive, high-achieving families, I think that's exactly what it was. So, okay. Bulimia is 1%. I don't know if these are lower than you guys thought, but tends to come from childhood obesity, negative self-evaluation, and that can come from a lot of different places. All right, and then the one that people may not be as common is binge eating disorder. And I think that you have to be careful here, because I think we all go through like, oh, I'm going to eat badly, right? Or I broke up with someone and I'm going to go eat some ice cream. That's not what it is. It's 2% of the population, and it's more extreme than that. It is, I'm dealing with my emotions hardcore, and I'm going to go binge eat. I actually just saw a commercial the other day for this and never seen it before. So that is there as well. Okay? All right, our last category are personality disorders. And this is kind of a broad category. So, characterized by inflexible and enduring behavior patterns that impair social functioning. So here, it is behavior that lasts a long time. They don't function normally. And it does not have to do with like anxiety or depression or delusion. So it's not those categories. And it's not something like autism here. There's a couple different, you don't need to know all these. There's a couple different categories in here. Avoidant, schizoid, histrionic, narcissistic, and borderline. The one that we're going to focus on is antisocial. Okay, make sure you listen to this. Antisocial is not, I don't want to hang out with people. Because normally you hear the word, oh, he's just antisocial. This is not the same at all. So put that out there. People get that wrong on the test all the time. It's not that I just don't want to be around people. That's just maybe an adjective. This is a disorder. Okay, it's very different. Some people correlate this with a sociopath or a psychopath. They can be, but they don't have to be. But a lot of people with antisocial personality disorder can be a psychopath. All right. So here's the big thing. They exhibit a lack of conscience for wrongdoing, even toward friends and family members. So they don't feel bad, basically, after they do something wrong. This is not like my toddler who looks at me and I tell her don't put her feet up on the table and she puts her feet up on the table. Okay? This is like deeper stuff. Usually men, okay? And here's some of the behaviors. They lie, they steal, they fight, sexual behavior, and they don't feel bad about it. And the key part to this is even towards friends and family members. So a lot of people, like in jails, you would think maybe here, they lie, steal, fight, blah, blah, blah. But they either feel bad or they feel bad when it involves their family. Right? That's why most criminals do not have this. Charles Manson, okay, if you know him, he would be considered antisocial personality disorder. So some kind of characteristics here: they can't keep a job, they're irresponsible as a spouse or a parent, they're assaultive, criminal activity. Like we said, most criminals here don't fit. They show concern for their friends and family. Okay, they fear little, so not as scared, and they don't feel anything, usually. I have a great video, but I can't get it to you, about this guy who's like, I don't care, I'd cut him in the throat, or I punch him, and I choke him to death, that kind of stuff. He talks like that with like no empathy, and has been in kind of crime his whole life. The Devil in the White City. That is a fantastic book. It's creepy, but it's really good. Erik Larson, isn't that the guy who did the tattoo? What is that? The tattoo book. Girl with the dragon tattoo. Yeah, that series. I think that's him. So supposedly Leonardo DiCaprio is coming out starring in this movie, but it's about a serial killer during Chicago World Fair, I think, and true story, and how you wouldn't have known that he was a psychopath because a lot of his personality traits is charming, he's deceptive, that kind of thing. He acted like a doctor and then killed all these people. So anyway, you may not know from the outside that somebody has a lack of empathy for people. This guy down here, Henry Lee Lucas, crazy person. confessed to bludgeoning, suffocating, stabbing, shooting, mutilating 360 women, men, and children. And here's some of his quotes. Once I've done a crime, I just forget it. I think of killing like smoking a cigarette, like another habit. So there is that. Yeah, don't care, right? They don't have that empathy there, which is pretty scary. Some quick things about why, or what they know about antisocial personality. There are biological and psychological reasons. I think biological may be more fascinating, personally. Okay, so if you're looking at this chart, they have found that youngsters, before committing a crime, respond with lower levels of stress hormones. So, for example, when you guys are about to do something wrong, whatever it is, you start to get that like nervousness and that's pumping through your body. You start sweating, that kind of stuff. Well, they found out that people with this, they don't have those hormones pumping through them as much. So that adrenaline. So that means that they can go commit a crime and their adrenaline just stays the same, which is fascinating to me because there is that huge biological component to that, right? Here's another one. There we go. Okay, so looking at this, all right, this PET scan, what do you notice is different? Less activity for the murderer where, especially? The frontal lobe. So these were PET scans of 41 murderers revealed they had reduced activity in the frontal lobe. Okay, so what's going on in the frontal lobe? Judgment and planning, which makes sense with murder, right? That you're not making very good judgment decisions. Follow-up study, repeat offenders, so people who had committed multiple crimes had 11% less frontal lobe. So that, again, that biological reason there for these disorders. Okay. Here, the likelihood that one will commit a crime doubles when childhood poverty is compounded with pregnancy complications. So, ouch. Sorry. That ouch was, there's still a baby in my stomach. All right, looking at here. Percentage of criminal offenders, childhood poverty. That obviously makes a connection in my mind. People that go through poverty are more likely to commit crime because either that's what they know, that's what they're around. Sometimes it's because they are trying to, they might rob a store because they don't have this. But then if you add that with pregnancy complications, so showing you that there is some kind of nature involved there with pregnancy, that the risk goes even higher. Okay? Alright, so that's kind of a fascinating one. Wish we could do more stuff with all these, but those are your disorders that we're going to cover. Just kind of looking at overall, 15% of the population down here struggles with a mental disorder. Not sure if that's higher or lower than you thought, but it is very significant. And so here's some of the rates. So I don't know if you expected this, but phobias are the highest. And then you get alcohol abuse up here. Mood disorder, so that's your depression there. That's up there. Anxiety's up there. So, there you go. And looking at this, talks about different places in the rate of diagnosis. Look at the United States, boom, at the top. What's up with that? So part of the question here is, what's the effect of culture on disorders? We talked about earlier, United States maybe being not as tough as others, right? Is there overdiagnosis in the United States of these things? Or is there under in other places, like Japan, Italy? And it makes you wonder, why Italy, right? Anyway, this is just, in general, these are just risk factors and things to protect against them at the same time. It's probably what you kind of expected. Positive family relationships help not lead into a lot of these. I mean, that makes sense, right? Anyway, okay, that's it. So your test for this is joint with the next chapter. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about is therapy and how do they deal with all these disorders that we talked about. All right, see you guys. Let's see if I can pause it. I can't.